everyone. Good morning and welcome to First Things First. I'm Jenna Wolfe. That is Nick Wright. Brian Westbrook joining us for this last day of 2019, which I just realized about 10 seconds before we went on the air.
Really?
Thank you for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
Really? Surprisingly.
I mean, all the streets are blocked off.
Yeah.
The single biggest New Year's Eve celebration in the world is taking place 100 yards from here.
Yep.
And I'm glad you're on the same page.
And I just realized it. Happy Just About New Year to all of you. So glad you're joining us.
And it's written right
morning,
there.
And it's written in the teleprompter. Nick, I love you so much. We got a lot to pack in before we call it a year, so let's get started immediately with the latest on the fate of Cowboys head coach Jason Garrett. Garrett is still waiting to find out if he'll be back in Dallas next season. That after finishing the season a disappointing 8-8. He reportedly met with Jerry Jones yesterday. Now we're hearing he'll meet with him again today. Only one of two things seem to be on the table here for Jason Garrett. Either he's let go or he's not. Nick, why do you think he hasn't been fired quite yet?
Well, because I don't think he's technically going to be fired. He's not going to be back as the head coach. Initially, it was being reported his contract expired tomorrow on the first of the year. It since has been reported, I think, with more certainty. The contract actually expires on January 13th. And you have some duties, and Brian, you can speak to this, whether you're coming back as head coach or not, unless you've been fired prior to the end of the season, of exit interviews, of meeting with the players and giving the players their evaluation, things to work on, whatever the offseason plan would be. And I think Jerry Jones and Stephen Jones feel Jason Garrett has earned the right to fully finish out the season. If he hadn't, they could have fired him during the season to try to give the team a jolt. Once you decide to let him coach the entirety of the year, unless it's a Freddie Kitchens situation where you've built up no credibility, where you've built up no equity with the team, and you just want to get it over with as soon as possible, let him finish out the exit interviews. And then I would imagine today, what's going to happen in that meeting is he's going to be told, your contract is not going to be renewed. We are going to start our coaching search today, but we're not going to do you the disrespect of firing you with 11 days left on your deal, because why would we do that? So to me, there is nothing odd, or there is no real chance that Jason Garrett pulls off what I think it was our friend Chuck Pagano pulled off once upon a time, where he walked into a meeting where it looked like he was going to be fired and walked out of the meeting having kept his job and gotten an extra year in his contract. I think Jason Garrett, it is a certainty he's not the head coach of the Cowboys next year. They are just letting him finish out the string, if you will, which involves meeting with everyone on the roster, having those exit interviews, and then being told your services here are no longer needed.
I think it's strange that Jerry Jones would want him to do those exit interviews, because in those exit interviews, you're saying you did a good job this year. Here are the things you need to work on for next year. Here are the things that when you come back, we want you to be able to do. Here are the things that are going to help us win games for the next year coming. Here's the things that you need to work on. And if Jason Garrett is not going to be the guy that's going to make those decisions for the next year, he's not going to be the next head coach, why do you need to have an exit interview? I mean, there were years where I played in Philadelphia. I never had an exit interview with Andy, except for one time I said, Andy, I need to talk to you. What are the things that I want to get better at? What are the things that you need me to be able to do for the following year? So for Jason Garrett to be able to do exit interviews, to me, it doesn't make sense. I think he is doing them. Jerry Jones is doing him a bit of a courtesy by saying, hey, we'll let you stay and maybe say bye to the guys. He's been there for a long time. Say goodbye to the fellows on the team. Say goodbye to the people in the organization, in the front office, in the building. But other than that, the decision as far as firing Jason Garrett should have already been made. In my opinion, once you didn't make the playoffs, you have already made that decision. 2-3 weeks ago, when you said, hey, I don't know that Jason Garrett is going to be our head coach, but he'll be coaching somewhere in the NFL, you've already made that decision.
It sounds like you think it's a little odd that he's coming back in for a second round of interviews. Forget with the exit interviews or whatever that is, but with Jerry Jones himself, like they didn't finish whatever conversation they were having yesterday. Do you think that leaves the door open even the slightest bit that there's a remote chance he might be coming back?
I think the thought, if I'm Jason Garrett, I'm saying, hey, I got a second opportunity to go in there and talk to the boss and say, here are all the things that I want to do better. Here are all the things I want to do differently. That's a great opportunity for Jason Garrett. If I'm Jerry Jones, again, my decision has already been made. Yes. I want my team to be better. We're underachieving. And what could I say to Jason Garrett at this point that I haven't already said?
Well, and I think that here is what my plan would be moving forward. forward if I do get a contract extension. Because again, it is not as simple as the Cowboys just letting the status quo slide. If they were to bring him back, it is with a brand new contract, a new 3 or 4 year, fully guaranteed as these coaching contracts are. That's not going to happen. I think yesterday was the day Jason Garrett was able to make his case to Jerry Jones. He then said, okay, go do your exit interviews, which to your point might actually be goodbyes rather than exit interviews, and we will talk tomorrow. I'll take under advisement what you've told me now. We'll talk tomorrow, which is now today, and that is the day Jason Garrett's going to find out what he already knows and what everyone already knows, which is he's not going to be the coach of the Cowboys anymore. He went into this year knowing that if they went 10-6, won the division, and got knocked out in the second round of the playoffs, he probably wouldn't be back. Instead, they went 8-8, missed the playoffs entirely. It is 0%. He has as much chance of being the next head coach of the Cowboys as anyone at this desk does. And in fact, I would say Brian Westbrook maybe has a 1% chance because Jerry Jones might like some of his television commentary. There is no chance Jason Garrett's the head coach of the Cowboys next year. The question is, who is that person going to be?
And by not firing him now, by maybe perhaps waiting until his contract runs out, it doesn't keep them from looking ahead to the next head coach, which I think is an important point that you made.
Right. Look, they clearly didn't want Ron Rivera. No. You could argue they've missed out on Ron Rivera, but Ron Rivera's been available for a month. While he's a person that I thought would have been a perfect fit in Dallas, that is not the person they are targeting, obviously. No one else has hired a coach. Like other people have fired coaches, and we have had other teams set up interviews. No one's going to say to the Dallas Cowboys, well, my interview calendar is now full. Everyone's going to take that meeting. Everyone's going to listen. And the question for Jerry Jones is going to be, does he want to go with someone with NFL head coaching experience? I mentioned Josh McDaniels' name yesterday. I think a lot of people are going to be mentioning that name. I'm going to mention a few other names that I think no one is mentioning because in this league, black head coaches tend to get one shot, and if they are fortunate enough to get a second shot, they never get a third. But Marvin Lewis, Jim Caldwell, Leslie Frazier, guys that I think would bring a credibility and a professionalism to that locker room. Guys who all of them, Leslie Frazier made the playoffs with Christian Ponder. Marvin Lewis made the playoffs 7 times with Andy Dalton, and it was 6 times with Dalton, once with Carson Palmer. And Jim Caldwell, who the Lions said 9-7 and making the playoffs not good enough around here, but 3-12-1 with Matt Patricia gets you a third year. And so I know those aren't the sexiest of names. Josh McDaniels probably is the sexiest name on that list. It's that route or what I would consider the far more dangerous route, which is first-time NFL head coach, either the young offensive mind, Kellen Moore-ish, even though I don't think it'd be Kellen Moore, or someone out of college football, which has enormous boom potential, but also enormous bust potential.
The biggest sticking point, if you're a coach, no matter whether you're coming from college or the NFL, is can I handle Jerry Jones? He'll be meddling on the team. He'll be questioning every play call. He'll be wondering what happens at the end of the game. And if you're a coach, you're saying, okay, well, I can go to an organization where I know I can have a conversation with the GM. We can have a football talk and say, these are the things we want to do. That's not going to happen in Dallas. And one of the reasons why I think he's given another interview to Jason Garrett is because he knows he can control Jason Garrett. He knows that he can speak to him and say, here are the things that I want to do as the owner and GM, and this is the way we're going to move. You can have that operation with Jason Garrett. I just watched a clip of Ron Rivera talking to his team. He doesn't have that power over Ron Rivera. Ron Rivera would have been his own man in Dallas, and that wouldn't have worked with Jerry Jones. And so there's a lot of coaches on that list. Some of those coaches want power. They want the ability to pick the groceries that they're going to be the cooking at the end of the day. Some of those things don't match up with what Dallas has going on.
That's why I think there's a little issue with Jerry Jones. He wants the sexy pick and the big hire and all of it, but yet again, he also wants someone who he's going to be able, in some ways, control.
He wants the power.
The way he did, with Jason Garrett. Time now for your Prime Performance, sponsored by Whole Foods Market. Color the classics this holiday. Say what you will about the Patriots and the end of their regular season. 6 Super Bowls would tell you they feel pretty comfortable in the postseason. Despite their struggles on offense, this is a confident team heading to the playoffs. Here's Pat's linebacker Kyle Van Noy with a message to New England's doubters out there.
At the end of the day, we're in a blessed situation. We're in the playoffs. We're one of 12 teams in the playoffs. I mean, we have a chance to go on a revenge tour, and what better way to start off with Tennessee, who we lost to last year. It's a big motivation. We weren't happy about our performance, and they're coming into our house, and what better way to get it started for the playoffs Saturday at 8:15 in Gillette. I mean, I hope it's going. I know it's going to be rocking, and I'm excited for our players to perform and in a way and play Patriot football on Saturday. I'm excited.
Well said by him. Nick, are you buying a revenge tour for the Patriots?
Well, I understand his point. It is certainly an opportunity. They didn't play Tennessee this year, but Brian, they played them last year and
Week 10.
Week 10, and Tennessee put it on them.
Yeah,
Didn't just beat them. They
blew them out.
Blew them out. And then they would then play Kansas City next. Kansas City went to Gillette this year and beat them. And then in the AFC Championship game, they'd probably play Baltimore. But if they weren't playing Baltimore, it would almost assuredly be because they're playing Houston, two other teams that beat them. So yes, it is a chance for a revenge tour. I do not think they're going to be able to complete that tour. I'm not quite as pessimistic as some that have them losing in the first round to Tennessee. But I would be shocked if they get past the second round in the Kansas City. But that is a very interesting quote for this reason. Kyle Van Noy's been with the Patriots for a little bit of time now. He knows the Patriot way and the Patriot mantra. And that is a very un-Patriot quote, talking about not just the game on Saturday, but the potential opponents thereafter, talking about the bigger picture, talking about the opportunity in front of us as far as what we could do this weekend and next weekend and the weekend after. That is nothing we ever hear from the Patriots when they are on message and fully operational. Kyle Van Noy, I think, is straying from that a bit because the team right now is in very unfamiliar territory because they never lose a game the way they lost on Sunday. They never go through a stretch where at the end of a season they lose as many as they win, losing 4 of 8. So Kyle Van Noy all of a sudden is reaching for things that you hear other teams that have less certainty, that have less confidence. Like, well, it's the opportunity for us to avenge these losses we've had throughout the year. It was just a surprising quote. For 31 locker rooms, that wouldn't have been a surprising quote. For a veteran for the New England Patriots, that was a surprising quote to me.
I'm not as surprised as you because I'm watching this football team and I'm saying they need some type of motivation. They got beat by the Miami Dolphins at home last week, so they need some way to get themselves ready. And you remember Spygate, you remember Deflategate. Those are all motivational things that help that team propel itself to Super Bowls there. But this is what happened last year when they got beat 34-10 by the Titans in Week 10. The Titans ran the ball for 150 yards, rammed it right down the Patriots' throat. The New England Patriots offense was 20% on third down. They couldn't stay on the field. The Titans were able to be on the field for 33 minutes. That's the exact blueprint that the Titans want to use this year. They want to hand the ball off to Derrick Henry. They want to throw the ball down the field with Tannehill and be able to score points and stop this offense. And if they can do that, then that's the recipe to beat this New England Patriots team. And so I think the Patriots do need to find some motivation, and that's exactly what Kyle Van Noy was trying to do.
This is not an automatic win by any stretch for the Patriots. This is actually a pretty dangerous Titans team coming into the playoffs.
Oh, listen, I think it's a very dangerous Titans team, and it's a far better team than they were last year. Derrick Henry was right. That week was when he was really turning into form, if you will. But this year, he has been the best running back in football. He had an opportunity to win the rushing title in Week 17, and he seized it with a dominant performance against backups. But still, it just continued his trend for the season, averaging nearly 100 yards per game. The Titans quarterback in last year's game was Marcus Mariota. Now, he played one of his better games of the season against the Patriots, but Ryan Tannehill this year led the NFL in passer rating, led the NFL in yards per attempt, completed over 70% of his passes. In his 12 games, if you extrapolate it to a full season, it would have been statistically, one of the most impressive quarterbacking seasons of this decade. Now, I don't think any of us fully believe in it, but the number, 9.5 yards per attempt, a 118 passer rating, those are all-time type of numbers, and the sample size isn't tiny. And the rookie receiver, another one of these rookie receivers that teams seem to find a way to be able to use, except for the Patriots, of course, A.J. Brown, he has been sensational for them. A young receiver who really looks like a star. So I do think this is a very live opponent. I do not think what a lot of people believe, which is this live opponent's going to go to Gillette and win. I don't think that the Titans are going to upset the Patriots. As down as I am on New England, I don't think they're going to lose back-to-back home games, including a playoff game to Ryan Tannehill, Mike Vrabel, and company. But They're not some 11-point favorites where you would just be shell-shocked if they lost. The most surprising loss that they could have had was last week. This loss would not be nearly as surprising, but I don't think it's going to happen.
One of the things I like about Tennessee, and I wouldn't be surprised if the Patriots lost either, but one of the things I love is that they're not afraid. When you talk about Kansas City, when they played the Patriots, they weren't afraid. That mystique of the Patriots was gone. Obviously, the Baltimore Ravens, same type of thing. Usually when you play the Patriots in the past, you were down 7 points before they even kicked off the ball because you were a little afraid. There's a lure about what's going on. You see number 12 across the field, and you're saying, we're a little bit afraid. We have to worry about that football team. That whole thing is gone. Those whole things of the thought process of those guys are better than us. They're going to just outplay us. We can't make any mistakes. Those things are gone. They made a bunch of mistakes last week against the Dolphins, and they were able to overcome those things. The Dolphins were and win that football game. And so I'll tell you this. One of the things that I'm glad, if I'm the Patriots, is that we're playing in this first round. Of course, we want the bye, but I'm glad that we have an opportunity to avenge the loss from last week. I'm glad that we don't have to wait 2 weeks and then have to go find a way to win a football game. I think the Patriots team this year is the type of team that doesn't need the bye. They need to be able to continue to play so they can get the ball rolling. The years before, they've been able to play and they were playing well at the end of the season. They needed to buy the bye just to get ready and get healthy. At this point, this football team needs to find a way to get better. That's why they need to play this game.
And there's this feel that the Tennessee doesn't really have anything to lose, and yet the Patriots have almost everything to lose, including all their history and tradition and this momentum that they've been riding and all of it. It just feels like it's an easier game plan for Tennessee to go in with.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I feel like both these teams know, if we lose, our season's over. Now, Tennessee has already had a successful season. Is to your point. It's like if Tennessee's already had a successful season for the Patriots, they have made the AFC Championship game, not the division round, the championship game every year since 2011. It is unfamiliar territory for them, even being in this position, having had a bye every year since 2010. One note for this game. The question that will, I think, determine this game is, what Patriot defense are we going to see? The one from the first half of the year that was historically great, or the one from the second half of the year that was very good, but not great? Stephon Gilmore, with one game to go in the season, had my vote, which I don't actually have, but had my vote for Defensive Player of the Year. And then Devontae Parker roasted him. A.J. Brown is better than Devontae Parker, at least to my eye. I think he's a more dominant force than Devontae Parker. This Patriot team is 12-0 when they allow 17 or fewer points. They are 0-4 when they allow more than 17 points. Can the defense hold the Titans under 17 or less? Because I don't think the offense all of a sudden is going to put up 30. I think those days are long gone. The Bills game, where we thought they were great, scored 24 points. That's the new standard of great for a Patriot offense. So how good can the defense be on a short week in obviously their biggest game of the season?
Another name to the MASH unit known as the Philadelphia Eagles. They have lost guard Brandon Brooks for the rest of the season with a separated right shoulder. A litany of injuries plaguing this team as they get ready to host Seattle in the first round of the playoffs on Sunday. Meanwhile, the status of Zach Ertz, Nelson Aguilar, Deshaun Jackson, Lane Johnson all remain unclear. Nick, you think injuries finally catch up to the Eagles Sunday against the Seahawks?
I do, and I also think Seattle's the better team. The Brandon Brooks injury is the most substantial injury they have suffered this season, aside from Deshaun Jackson. And Deshaun Jackson, I think, if they win this game, could be back for the divisional round. I would be shocked if he's back for this round. Brandon Brooks is one of the best players on their team, one of the most unheralded players on their team. And with Lane Johnson, I do think he's going to play, probably not at 100%. So you're going to have a less than 100% Lane Johnson, a replacement guard, and how upright is Carson Wentz going to be able to remain? Here's the silver lining for Philly. Even if they had more injuries, and even if Seattle was fully healthy, which they obviously aren't, you don't sign Marshawn Lynch out of retirement if you're fully healthy at the running back core. This is going to be a close game, because Seattle doesn't know how to play any game other than close games. Every single one of their wins this year, except for the win against Arizona, came in a game decided by a touchdown or less. All they play is close games where either team can win it at the end. They have just had such brilliant situational quarterback play by Russell Wilson, up to and including last week, where he damn near brought him back from 12 down in the last half of the fourth quarter to steal the division from San Francisco, that they have won the vast majority of those one-score games. So I think it'll be a close game. I think it'll be a good game, and it wouldn't be shocking if Philly won. I'm not writing them off like I did so foolishly in 2017, but I don't think they can overcome the injuries and the talent deficit and experience deficit that they have at the quarterback position from Russell Wilson and Pete Carroll coming in against Carson Wentz.
I think, honestly, the experience part probably is the biggest factor. But this is how Philly has been winning games recently. They run the ball really well with Miles Sanders, catching the ball out of the backfield with him. And Carson Wentz has been playing out of his mind these last few games. However, when they lost Brandon Brooks early on in the season, that run game slowed down tremendously because he's just that type of guy. He's a role grader in the middle of that offensive line. And then you put him out on the screens, and he's able to lead the way for Miles Sanders and Boston Scott. And so without him in the middle, it's going to be tough. Hopefully Lane Johnson comes back to try to solidify that right side of the line. But when you're playing against a team that has that experience, has a quarterback that has been there and done that, it's going to be tough, especially for Carson Wentz, who's getting his first playoff experience of his short career.
You also like Seattle in this one?
Unfortunately, I do.
Unfortunately?
Well, yeah, he's a Philly guy.
I want the Eagles to continue to play.
I want the Eagles to win, so I think the Eagles will win. So I'm very confident
the
to say,
other thing the Eagles have had is that they had a mojo going these last few games. And when you get that momentum going,
they have a lot of momentum.
At this point in the season, it usually continues to roll. Seattle's coming off a loss, so they're going to be hungry, but they're coming into Philadelphia. That's a big advantage.
Just quickly before we move on, 2 points. One is they did play earlier this year. Seattle, other than the Arizona game, that was the game Seattle dominated the most of any game on their schedule. You look at the final score, you see it was 17-10, or 17-9, I think actually, but not really. It was 17-3, and then Philly scored a touchdown with 20 seconds remaining to make the score look closer than it was. But a question for you: how big of an impact does Seattle having to go all the way to Philadelphia make in your estimation on this football game? Though going cross-country travel, we see it happen during the regular season and it seems to have a big impact. Do you think it has the same impact in a playoff game where teams are as amped up as they are?
Yeah, I think it has a small impact, but Seattle has been a really good road team, and they've been traveling all year long, and so I don't know that it has an impact on that football team. But normally, absolutely it would, because you're going either to the West Coast or to the East Coast, and you're off your time zone. But the way that Seattle has played on the road this year, I don't think it impacts them at all.
All right, let's move on now. The Associated Press came out with their Athletes of the Decade, and LeBron James edged out Tom Brady for the honors this decade. Brady went to 5 Super Bowls, won 3. LeBron went to 8 NBA Finals, won 3. Brian, you think they made the right call here? Is LeBron the male athlete of the decade over Tom Brady?
I mean, I think you're kind of splitting hairs between these two. You're talking about the best athletes that we've seen in a very long time, not just this decade. But I would pick Tom Brady for this reason. Football is just a team sport, and Tom Brady has done it with so many different people, a different offensive line unit, different wide receivers, different defenses, and he's done it against different teams as well. LeBron, in basketball, think about this. LeBron can be dominant and win a bunch of games. He did it in Cleveland at the beginning of his career, made playoffs, made finals without any help because he was that good. Tom Brady, you're seeing it this year, he has to be good, but everyone else around him has to be good as well. That's why I would lean towards Tom Brady. But I mean, you can't have a wrong answer here.
For the exact reason you made, however, is the reason why I think it's so clearly LeBron, because you're absolutely right. Brady can win a Super Bowl like he did last year, where he wasn't very good in that football game where they scored 13 points. If LeBron isn't good, his team loses. Those are the rules of engagement, and they have been the entirety of his career. No matter how good his teammates have been, he's never had a championship where you're like, oh, his teammates carried him to that. Go ahead,
No,
Brian.
well, Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh carried LeBron a few times.
Well, they were, but he was the best. Every championship they won, he was the best player.
No doubt about it.
So, he certainly has had help. I'm not arguing that when he's won titles, he hasn't had help. But there's never been a moment where you said, wow, the Cavs or the Heat or whomever won the title, won that series despite LeBron James. But the numbers also, the Associated Press, who has gotten the Athlete of the Year wrong a number of times, they maybe should scrub their history of it. Jackie Robinson did not win it the year he broke the color barrier. College football player did. They've had a lot of odd snubs. This one they got right. The titles they're even on this decade, 3 apiece. Finals appearances or Super Bowl appearances, it's 8-5. League MVPs this decade, it's 3-2. Finals MVPs, it's 3-2. And the other element of this that I think factors into it at least a bit is the impact LeBron, and some people would say for bad, I would argue for good. The impact LeBron has had on the sport as far as, and maybe all sports, player empowerment and player freedom of movement, that started this decade. That started with the decision which changed the way we look at what athletes are allowed to do. What athletes are allowed, the superstar athletes leaving where they were drafted to, aside from Kareem, or I guess Lou Alcindor at the time, leaving the Bucks to go to the Lakers, and Barkley leaving Philly to go to the Suns later in his career, it's just something that was not even considered a possibility. And now you see it even in football. You see guys saying, I do not like it here, I want to go somewhere else. And the power dynamic shifting from the organization of the front offices to the players, and that is a direct impact of what a lot of people consider to be LeBron's biggest mistake of the decade, which is the decision almost a decade ago.
LeBron is so special. So, I mean, again, it's hard to go against him. I kind of still factor in where Tom Brady was drafted at. But I know it had nothing to do with this decade. Sure. But when LeBron was coming out of high school, he probably was the best athlete in the NBA already at that point. Coming from the 6th round to be this multiple-time champion, Tom Brady, that still means something to me, even though it wasn't in this decade.
And let me make one quick case for Brady, even though I think they got this right. If Brady's career started this decade, he is a first ballot Hall of Famer and one of the 10 greatest quarterbacks ever. If the first decade of his career was his entire career, he's a first ballot Hall of Famer and one of the 10 greatest quarterbacks ever. First decade of his career, you're at three championships, a 4th appearance, a league MVP, and undefeated season. Second decade of his career, this decade, 3 championships, 5 appearances, 2 league MVPs, and a continual reinvention where we didn't see a single downtick really until the end of last year and obviously this season. He and Jerry Rice are the only 2 NFL players that I feel like you can confidently say had 2 separate Hall of Fame careers. Bisect their careers in the middle, they are both not only Hall of Famers, they're both all-time Hall of Famers of what they did. That is a testament in a brutal sport to what Brady's accomplished. But he's not, I mean, he wasn't the decade over LeBron. I mean, who are we kidding here?
Back here, first things first, now joined by former Pro Bowl cornerback Brandon Flowers.
Good
morning, Brandon. Nick loves your suit. I'm just
it's a great looking suit.
Appreciate it.
Yep.
Bringing the new year in the right way.
Yeah, nice little color. I like
because you haven't seen the watch yet.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
I was hiding that, B. I was hiding that.
Can't hide money, man.
Can't
Come
hide
on.
money.
Boys. They're just boys. Moving on to the New England Patriots now. In the aftermath of their loss to the Dolphins on Sunday, it was a day to forget for Tom Brady. He completed just 55% of his passes, finishing with a passer rating of 88. And that was just part of why they lost at home, in which they were favored by 17 in a game they actually needed to secure a bye. Yesterday, Brady said he knew exactly where to place the blame.
Yesterday we had plays I certainly did that I should make, and I didn't make them. You know, that's why you lose games. This week it's got to be more concentration, focus, determination, attitude. Everything has to be at its top this week. You just got to get to a great place where we're confident and trusting and going out there and executing at our highest level. And we can certainly execute a lot better than we did yesterday.
All right, so the Patriots failed to get a bye, which means they are playing this week. How much of that do you put on Tom Brady, Nick?
Oh, an enormous amount. It is obviously not all his fault, and one could argue he put them in position to get the bye when he drove down the field against Miami to take the lead. And if the defense could just hold up, they would have a bye, and it would have just been a scare. Another bad Patriots game that Coach Mangini would say, but they found a way to win, so it did no style points. And so the defense, though, that had been carrying this team all year, finally had a slip up, and it cost them the bye. But the reason the defense has had to carry them all year is because of substandard offensive play, most notably substandard passing game, which falls primarily on the quarterback. And the one thing Tom Brady, even at age 42, does exceptionally well is take care of the football. The second half of the year, he only threw 4 interceptions. But what were those 4 interceptions? Because if he throws just 3 of them, if you take just one of them back, They probably have a bye. Here's the first interception against Baltimore. They're in the fourth quarter. After being down 17-0, they've clawed back in the game. They're down 10 at the point. They have the ball. Brady throws a pick. The Baltimore scores a touchdown. Game over. Against Houston, they're up 3-0 early. Brady throws a pick. Houston goes on and scores. It's never a game the rest of the way. Against Kansas City, they're down 10-7 after starting off great in that football game. Mahomes had thrown a pick. They'd executed a trick play. Brady throws a pick, leads to a touchdown. They never get it closer than one touchdown the rest of the way. And against Miami, gets picked off for a pick six touchdown, leads Miami up 10-0, where you start to feel, oh, the upset could really happen, and that had an additional butterfly effect of that is why Belichick would not let them try to attempt a 2-minute drive at the end of the half. That is why Belichick, instead of saying 2 timeouts a minute 45, let's go take the lead, he said, nope, we'll sit on it and go to half. 4 interceptions in the second half of the year. All 4 came in losses. All 4 came at critical moments. Take any one of them back, they're likely 13-3 instead of 12-4, and they have the bye. So how much of it falls on Tom Brady? An enormous amount of it, because you can't have the number 1 defense in all of football, even if the second half of the year it wasn't historically great, and be the number 3 seed in your own conference and have it not fall on the offense. And if it falls on the offense, it falls on the quarterback in 2019, the way football's played.
I don't necessarily think it's all Tom Brady's fault, and it falls so much on him. You know, the offense is what it is this year. Usually they're an offensive-driven team, but this year it's not the same thing. They counted on it being an offensive-driven team at the beginning of the season when they had Antonio Brown, a healthy Julian Edelman. They drafted a first-rounder in N'Keal Harry, so they wanted their offense to be the driving force of this team. But when Antonio Brown left, Josh Gordon left, Edelman's been hurt all year. They're just not the same team. They need this defense to play well to win every game this year. They're not getting separation on the outsides, and it's frustration on Tom Brady. You know, that's why he's making a lot of error throws. He's rattled all game because the pass rushes are getting to him. It's just he's flustered right now. He's trying to force things right now. His receivers aren't getting open, so he's going to need this defense to play well. Yes, he threw a pick six at Eric Rowe, which was big in this game, but the defense didn't help him out at all. And I think for him to win this playoff game and for him to win the rest of the season, the defense has to play well because they just don't have the personnel on offense to win these games, Tom Brady alone.
Well, I think all those 4 interceptions, both of you guys are right. A lot of the fault goes to Tom Brady, but I think you got to even look even past Tom Brady. They had Antonio Brown. Tom Brady didn't want to get rid of him. They had, obviously Gordon. He got moved around, different things. They needed to find someone to replace Antonio Brown. They needed to find someone to replace Gronk before that. That fault falls directly on the shoulders of Bill Belichick. Because you knew you have a 42-year-old quarterback. You knew that you needed some playmakers down the field. You knew that you're losing your security blanket and the biggest mismatch in pro football over the last 10 years in Rob Gronkowski, and you didn't replace that guy. And so when you're talking about a guy in Tom Brady who's older, that's going to need people around to make him better, to make him elite again, and you don't replace him, then that's the coach, that's the GM's fault. They have to make sure that they have a nice group of receivers, nice group of athletes around them, including that offensive line. They didn't do enough in the offseason to help Tom Brady.
But so here's where I would push back on that. They drafted a receiver in the first round, a year after drafting a running back in the first round. They then traded a second-round pick for another receiver. Now, maybe they just missed on all those guys. Or maybe N'Keal Harry is not having the success, and I know he was hurt for part of the year, that some of these other rookie receivers are having, because DK Metcalf gets to play with Russell Wilson, and McCole Hardman gets to play with Patrick Mahomes. And A.J. Brown, who has been sensational, and I can't believe I'm saying this, gets to play with Ryan Tannehill, who this year is playing out of his mind. Mohamed Sanu and Emmanuel Sanders were both traded for hours apart. Emmanuel Sanders has been an impact player. Maybe they traded for the wrong guy because they traded for Sanu first. Or maybe it's that Sanu would look as good as he looks in New England if he were with Jimmy Garoppolo, and Emmanuel Sanders would look like the hell happened to Emmanuel Sanders if he were in New England. The common thread here is the quarterback play.
Or maybe they needed a Gronk. Maybe that the way that Belichick used that tight end in that offense was the difference. And you see Brady needs him. Brady needs him in the playoffs. Brady needs him as the one, those one or two catches that he's not getting at the end of games. Maybe that was the one position of all the moves they made that they didn't replace this year.
And Gronk was the safety blanket, but where do the Patriots go from here? Because Brady is just going to get older. Do they get another receiver in the first round to create weapons around him? What do New England do from here to make sure they are successful? Like, I don't know.
Like, you mean looking ahead to Tennessee looking into next year?
Looking into next year.
Wow.
They have to find themselves a deep threat. They need to find themselves a consistent nature in the offensive line, first of all. They want to get that run game going the same way that they did towards the end of last year with Sony Michel. They tried to get it going last week. Sony Michel actually had a pretty successful day against the Dolphins, but they need that deep threat. They need that thing that's going to threaten the defense, that's going to put fear into a defense. Tom Brady isn't getting any younger. He's not in the situation where he can carry this team like he did 10 years ago. At this point, you need better players around him. You're absolutely right. They have to find someone that can be a mismatch like Gronk was.
All right, so a few quick points. One is to answer your question. What they do next year is I believe they are going to have a new quarterback. That the New England Patriots refused to give Tom Brady a contract extension when in his previous 3 years he had done, in order, the greatest comeback in Super Bowl history, then won the league MVP, then won another Super Bowl. That was his resume of the 3 years prior to this offseason, and he still sang for his supper, and they said, no, you can't have it. We will not extend you. If they wouldn't extend him then at age 41, coming off of all the things he had just done, this year at age 42, when they don't get a bye, when his numbers are as bad as they are. So that's the first point. Second point, I think it is disrespectful to Brady's greatness historically to say, well, if he doesn't have the greatest tight end ever, arguably, how can he function? He didn't used to need the greatest tight end ever. They won a Super Bowl one year when Gronk was hurt.
But he's not the greatest ever anymore.
Well, and that leads...
In not bringing him back, you are doing him a disservice.
So that leads to the final point, which is it is not just that he's not the greatest ever anymore. It's that over the second half of the season, he hasn't been the greatest ever. He hasn't been great. He hasn't been good. He hasn't been average. He's been really bad. We used the Peyton Manning, the final year in Denver example, and they, by the way, did win that Super Bowl, but that defense was really great, better than this Patriots defense. And we've been saying, well, Brady hasn't deteriorated to that level, Peyton Manning in 2015. Well, look at Brady's last 8 games and tell me what level it is. Last 8 games, he's 32nd in the league in completion percentage, 30th in yards per pass, and 27th in passer rating. If that's not on him, then what is?
Well, you also got to look at the teams that they played in the second half. The first half of the season, they were in cupcake mode. Mm-hmm. They were playing the softest teams in the NFL. The second half, they played much tougher teams: Houston, KC, Baltimore. Those are just tough teams to beat, and much more qualified and better football teams than the Patriots.
Agreed, but those teams, except for Baltimore, none of them have elite defenses. Houston does not have an elite defense. Kansas City's defense played well as of late. I give them credit. Buffalo's probably the best defense they played as of late.
But they don't have to be elite against that football team. That's the point. They don't have enough playmakers, so your defense doesn't have to be elite against Tom Brady in this New England offense.
Back here with Brandon Flowers, we're talking Browns and a season to forget for Baker Mayfield. A step back in almost all facets of his game after a great year one. That step back cost Freddie Kitchens his job, and now the Browns are looking for their 4th head coach since drafting Baker. The candidates reportedly include Urban Meyer, Josh McDaniels, Greg Roman, and Mike McCarthy. Brandon, I'll start with you. Does Baker Mayfield still make the Browns an attractive destination for head coaching candidates, you think?
I think the Browns are an attractive destination, not because of Baker Mayfield, but because they have a great roster. But
isn't the quarterback the heart and soul of where that roster begins?
It does, but you can do what Arizona did and not fall in love with your quarterback like they did Josh Rosen and draft a quarterback like Kyler Murray, who you want to bring in. So I think it's just attractive because everything that's around Baker Mayfield. And Baker Mayfield, if he gets the right signal caller in there, I would just like to see how he can go. If he can bring in a Josh McDaniels, someone that can come in, being a head coach is all about getting the guys to perform at their best. So if Josh McDaniels come in, tell Baker, sit him down, hey, you remind me of Brady did when he was young. Just make these throws. These are the reads you need to make. Go to Odell Beckham and say, hey, I remember when I had Randy Moss, and at one time he felt like he wasn't getting the ball as much, but it won us championships because he was a decoy. I think that would make that team better. It would be somebody that they respect with Josh McDaniels coming in, and I think it'll be great for the team. And another head coach that is on the list that I think will be valuable is Greg Roman out of Baltimore. Yeah, just because you got to get him away from Lamar Jackson right now. Those two together seem unstoppable. And defensive coordinators are having, just to weaken the division.
Sacrifice us to make sure.
Exactly. And if he feels like Baker Mayfield isn't a quarterback for him, go draft a quarterback. There's plenty of mobile quarterbacks coming out of college that can get the job done. So those two coaches, I think.
So you, just real quick to follow up on the Roman point, because I think Greg Roman's going to be an NFL head coach. Baker does not, to me, appear to be near the athlete necessary to take advantage of the scheme Greg Roman wants to run, what he did so successfully with Cap, what he did a little bit with Tyrod Taylor, and what he's obviously doing to historical success with Lamar Jackson. To you, it's on the board. It seems that the Browns, after next season, move on from Baker entirely, especially if they hire a head coach like Greg Roman that loves the roster more than the actual quarterback.
Definitely. Baker Mayfield isn't wowing the league with his arm right now. He's not wowing the league with his leadership right now. So what's going to make you hang on to Baker that say, I cannot move away from this guy?
Wow.
So definitely it's on the board with Greg Roman coming in to, hey, even if the quarterback's coach try to bump up to offensive coordinator for the Baltimore Ravens, Greg Roman knows what can stop that offense. You know, he has it inside out. And right now it looks like Baltimore is going to run that division for a couple years.
You know, when I watch this football team and I think about Baker, I think back to 2018, 27 touchdowns, 14 interceptions. He only got sacked 25 times. And obviously in all those categories, he took a step back this season. But if I'm a guy that can develop quarterbacks, Mike McCarthy, I think he can develop quarterbacks. I'm saying this is a great opportunity to go get my hands on a young quarterback and affect his entire career. I remember when I came into college, I had a coach, Stan Drayton, that coached me so hard. I had to go up to him after the first couple of weeks like, yo, do you like me at all? Because every time I see you, you're yelling at me, you're trying to tell me what to do. You're trying to change my game. Those things that he saw in me, he knew I needed to change so I could be a better player. That's the type of coach that Baker needs. He needs a coach that's going to say, listen, you have all these athletes around you. You don't have to be the superstar. Hand the ball off to Chubb. Get the ball out of your hands quickly to Jarvis Landry and Odell Beckham Jr. You don't have to be the star by just holding on to the ball and throwing it deep and far as you can. You have to be able to get the ball out and stop turning the ball over. A head coach can impact him. An offensive coordinator can impact him. He just has to find the right guy. This is a big decision for the Cleveland Browns.
All right, it's probably the last big decision John Dorsey is going to be able to make.
That's right.
Because if Baker or this head coach don't work out, John Dorsey's going to be out of a job. He picked Baker. He's basically all in on Baker. He picked Freddie. We're giving him a mulligan on Freddie. This next one, he has to get it right. I am not yet, again, going to sell my Baker Mayfield stock, and I think the Browns are a very attractive job if you believe in Baker's body of work as opposed to this season. We've got to be a little more fair in evaluation of athletes when Baker has done nothing but not only achieve at a record-setting level at every year of his career, from walk-on at Texas Tech, then his first year at Oklahoma, before he won the Heisman, he set the all-time efficiency mark for college football. The next year, he broke his own mark and won the Heisman. The next year, he comes to a team, Cleveland, a team that is coming off 1-31 over the last 2 years, takes over after a couple weeks, leads them almost to a 500 record, deals with a head coaching change midway through the season, an offensive coordinator change midway through the season, and still thrives. Now, this year, he has failed on all fronts. He has failed in how he's conducted himself. He has failed in his maturity. He has certainly failed on the field. But I want to give this guy who has shown us at every level he can succeed, even at the NFL level, more than 1 year of failure before you abandon it. And if you believe in Baker, this gets to your point. The talent on this roster is exemplary. Myles Garrett, I know we forget about him, and he's technically still suspended by the league, but I think he'll be back week 1. He is an elite player. Denzel Ward showed his rookie season he could be an elite player even though he took a step back this year. We know how good Odell is. We know how good Jarvis is. Nick Chubb looked like he was going to win the rushing title this year before Derrick Henry snatched it from him with 3 hours left in the NFL season. If you think the quarterback can even just be above average, then this is, to me, a super attractive job and a job where if you get them to the playoffs, they might build you a statue. You don't have to go win a Super Bowl like you probably do in Dallas to be considered a success.
So then give me a name of a guy who can corral all that talent to get everyone on the same page, because it's a lot of individual personalities, which we thought coming into last season, we needed someone to take all of that talent and make them work in one direction.
I think a lot of people can do it. I think it's people that have been NFL head coaches before. And the one guy who has not been an NFL head coach who I think might be able to do it is Urban Meyer. Because Urban Meyer, I think he has as much credibility as a college coach can have amongst NFL guys. Because he coached a lot of guys who are in the league who can speak to him because he coached at such a high level at such great programs in Florida and forget Utah, but he did a great job there too, at Florida and then Ohio State. And also, you watch Urban on television, I'm just saying this because he works with Fox, you can see the presence he has about him. But if they don't want to go Urban, I do think Josh McDaniels would be a great answer. He has failed in one spot, learned from it, gone to New England. I don't think he is going to take the Cleveland job. You know, Belichick's dislike for the Browns, I wonder how much that has polluted, if you will, Josh McDaniels. But I think Leslie Frazier is not a sexy hire. He made the playoffs with Christian Ponder. He made the playoffs with the quarterback play at the level Baker was this year because of the talent on the roster and because of his power of personality, if you will, even if it didn't show in press conferences. He's now done a great job in Buffalo as a defensive coordinator. No one's talking about his name. That's a guy I would think about. You mentioned in the division. I'm bringing up another person that people think is a terrible coach, and I don't know why. Cincinnati. I'm sorry, Marvin Lewis for what he did with Cincinnati. What would the Browns pay for 7 playoff appearances for whoever their next head coach is? Now, I know they were one and done every year, but they had the worst quarterback than their opposition every year but one. Someone who is a true professional head coach, which Freddie Kitchens just flatly was not.
They need to find a guy that can be a face of the organization so that Baker Mayfield doesn't have to be the frontline guy because of some of those maturity things. Until he matures and says the right things that the organization needs him to put out there, they need a guy that can talk to and mention all the things that the organization needs him to.
Hey, Brian Westbrook, come on, play a little in or out?
Let's play.
Yesterday, the Giants fired Pat Shurmur as their head coach after 2 seasons. They have a solid foundation in quarterback Daniel Jones and star running back Saquon Barkley. So, Brian Westbrook, you in or out on the Giants being the best head coaching vacancy in the NFL?
You know, when I think about it, I would love to be the coach for the Dallas Cowboys, but I have to deal with Jerry Jones on a regular basis, and I just don't want to do that. With the New York Giants, of course, you have Saquon and Daniel Jones, but you have the Mara family, and I think that is impactful. That helps you out just a little bit. They've been a solid family throughout their history of owning this football team. I think it is probably the best current head coaching job.
I'm going to go out. I'm going to go Cleveland. You know, in New York, it's a tough media. If you don't win, they own you heavy. They're not going to give you a long leash. If you start out 0-3, it's going to feel like the world falling down on you. And Cleveland, they're not expecting you to win that much. So with a talented roster, if you go in and you make some things happen early in Cleveland, I think it'll just be better overall for a head coach.
I'm also out. You know what's worse than dealing with Jerry Jones? Dealing with Dave Gettleman and having Dave Gettleman be your boss.
And they're keeping Gettleman.
Yeah, somehow. And I'm not sold on Danny Fumbles. He throws a really nice ball. He's the most fumblingest fumbler I've ever seen fumble. He needs to somehow get that cleaned up. If I don't trust the GM, I'm questionable about the quarterback. It can't be the most attractive opening.
Gettleman got Jones and Saquon. Two good picks.
Okay, we'll see. I don't know if I agree with that. We'll see.
On Sunday, Marshawn Lynch played his first game of the 2019 season, 12 carries for just 34 yards, but he did get into the end zone. Brian, you in or out on Marshawn being a difference maker in Sunday's playoff game?
I'm out. I think the Eagles' run defense has been really good. They've only allowed one rusher, Ezekiel Elliott, over 100 yards all season long. I just don't think that he's going to be the guy that's going to impact them. If the Seahawks are going to beat the Eagles, they're going to have to throw the ball down the field. It's going to have to be Russell Wilson.
I agree for all the points you just made, Brian. I just don't see Marshawn Lynch carving up this Eagles defense, which is their strength right now. Their front seven is playing ball. Marshawn Lynch is only his second game back. I'm not looking for him to be a difference maker this early.
I'm in for a number of reasons. He's going to be a difference maker one way or another, because what Pete Carroll and that offense in Seattle is not going to do, even if it's what they obviously should do, is let Russell Wilson just drop back 45 times and do Russell Wilson things. They are going to run the football repeatedly, even if it leads to a playoff loss like it did last year when Russell was brilliant when he gave him the opportunity, but they still were just running into the line of scrimmage repeatedly. So Marshawn's good. They're going to run the ball at least 30 times in this football game. I don't know if they'll be successful. They will run the ball at least 30 times in this football game. I would wager any amount of money on it. It's what the Seahawks do. It's why a team that maybe could have won 13 games clawed their way to 11, because they run a caveman offense in Seattle.
It doesn't mean you need to wager any amount of money on it. Just let him. He'll win and lose his money. He's a grown man.
Jenna's so worried about my finances.
I am.
There's a reason I got 2 jobs. One job for the family, one job for the gambling.
It's a shame you skipped Christmas this year. The team the Seahawks will be facing, the Philadelphia Eagles. Philly got some more bad news on the injury front, with guard Brandon Brooks being ruled out for the rest of the season. Brian Westbrook, you in or out on the Eagles overcoming their injuries to win Sunday against Seattle?
I'm out. I think that in football, you can overcome some injuries, but the amount of injuries that you've had to playmakers, Zach Ertz and all of the receivers, then Lane Johnson, and now Brandon Brooks, who's been one of the guys that leads the way in the run game, which has been really effective with Miles Sanders. It's just hard to win against better opponents that way. I'll be out.
I'm out also. Wentz looked great against the Giants, pulling his weight with no receivers, no running back, no tight end. I think it runs out in Seattle, and I just think Russell Wilson's going to do too much in this game to just overcome.
Listen, I think it'll be a very close game. I think it'll be a very good game, but I am also out. I wouldn't be shocked if Philly won, but Seattle loves playing these tightly contested games. They have been extraordinary on the road. You pointed this out earlier. 7-1 on the road this season. They already played Philadelphia this year. It was one of the more dominant defensive performances. Now it was when Philly wasn't playing as well. For all those reasons, I'm out. I think Seattle gets this game and gets a third matchup against San Francisco in what would be an elite divisional round.
Well, drawing a blank now. Saints and Vikings facing off Sunday on Fox. New Orleans big favorites in this one. Vikings head coach Mike Zimmer's taken notice, saying, quote, "I don't think anyone believes we can win this game." Brian, the wild card team most likely to pull off an upset this weekend is blank.
We just talked about them. It's the Titans. They're going into Gillette, where the Patriots are not playing well. They have a run game. Tannehill has been playing out of his mind, and I think that defense is not afraid of that offense of the Patriots. The Titans have a great chance to win this game.
I'm going Titans as well. The NFL playoffs are all about matchups. New England struggles stopping a run. Tannehill, he's feeling his arm right now. Patriots are suspect on the pass defense last week. I think Titans get it done.
I can't believe it. I'm the one that believes in the Patriots on this set, at least for this week. I think we're likely going to get a chalk opening round, meaning all the favorites win. If we don't, to me, it's the Bills. The Bills, since week 5, Josh Allen, 17 touchdowns, 3 picks. But the biggest mismatch in this Bills-Texans game is a coaching one. You have who I think is one of the best young coaches in the NFL, and Doug McDermott, against a coach.
Sean McDermott.
Sean McDermott, pardon me. Doug McDermott, I think, was a basketball player for Creighton. Yeah, there you go. Dougie McBuckets. Sean McDermott, thank you. Against Bill O'Brien, who every year in the postseason reminds people why he's in over his head as an NFL head coach. I don't care how many AFC South titles he wins. He's a detriment to his team come the postseason. So if there is an upset, I think it's most likely to be the Bills.
All right, even though Tom Brady has struggled recently, he is still the GOAT. Maybe this weekend he and that offense will finally click, get things going. Brian, the quarterback playing wildcard weekend that you'd want most under center is blank.
Well, Nick made the comment earlier. The Saints are overrated. Number 3 seed. Drew Brees is a quarterback that you want. Overqualified. You're right, overqualified 3 seed. When you think about it, if you want a guy to be accurate, he's that guy. You want a guy that's going to throw the ball where the ball placement should be, he's that guy. He can make the big throw down the field. Drew Brees brings everything, and he's a great leader, great quarterback.
I got Drew Brees also. I feel like revenge tour, revenge games, this is Drew Brees and New Orleans Saints year. The last 2 years, they went out on some bogus calls, the Minnesota Miracle, then a L.A. Rams call. I think that this is their year. They're going to be having a chip on their shoulder all playoffs, Drew Brees.
As much as I love Breeze, I'm going to go with Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson has always elevated his game in the postseason. Even the game where he was having one of the worst, not just playoff games, one of the worst games of his career, the NFC Championship game against the Green Bay Packers. At the very end of that game, what did he do? He rallied for a double-digit point comeback and then the touchdown pass in overtime. There's something special about Russell Wilson, particularly this time of year, where as great as Breeze is, you don't always know you're going to get his best effort in the postseason. Usually at home you do, but Russell Wilson is my answer.
All right, offense is king in the NFL. 8 of the top 10 scoring offenses this regular season made the postseason. So we're hoping to see more explosive plays from guys like Lamar Jackson, Pat Mahomes, Drew Brees. Brian, the most dangerous offense in the playoffs is blank.
Lamar Jackson. It's the Ravens. And when you look at what that offense is able to do, they put fear in every defense. There hasn't been very many defenses, if any, this season that has been able to stop Lamar Jackson with his legs, with his arm. When you look at their offense, they have to be the most dangerous offense in the playoffs.
I'm going Ravens as well. You know, Mark Ingram running the ball, Lamar Jackson running the ball, Lamar Jackson throwing the ball. He's not just throwing to his outside guy. His tight ends run scotch-free down the defense. I think this is the most explosive offense.
The Ravens have been the most explosive offense in the NFL this season. First team to ever do 200 rushing, 200 passing, and I think they're going to duplicate that in the postseason. However, I still can't quite get out of my head the postseason offense from last year. I'm a little worried about the receivers on the outside. I see the smile on your face.
Let me guess. You're going to say the Chiefs.
Yeah, I'm going to say the Chiefs. They got the best quarterback in football. They got the best weapons in football. I think they're the scariest team to match up against offensively in the entire league. With respect to Baltimore, I'm going to say the most dangerous offense is the Kansas City Chiefs.
All right, finally, the Associated Press named LeBron James their male athlete of the decade, and it was quite the decade for LeBron, who won 3 championships. But Brian, the athlete, not of the Associated Press, but according to the Brian Westbrook Press, would be blank.
Well, the correct press, which is the Brian Westbrook Press, is going to get this thing absolutely right. Serena Williams. I mean, it's going to take some time for me to go through all this. 12 Grand Slam titles. 3 times she was the AP Female Athlete of the Year. 37 singles title. The next closest one is 26. She spent 4 years, she was in top 4, 8 of these 10 years of this decade. She's reached 19 to 33 Grand Slams in this decade and won the 2017 Australia Open. And Jenna, this is while she was pregnant? Are you kidding me? There's no better athlete in the decade than Serena.
I'm going LeBron James. You talking about 8 straight finals. This guy has been running the league since he stepped foot in this league. When he had help, when he didn't have help, he always made it happen on the basketball court. LeBron James, you can't get too much better than that.
Usain Bolt and Serena both have really credible cases. I'm also going to go with LeBron James. I'm going to try to do this in about 30 seconds. Here's what LeBron James, over 7 consecutive trips to the NBA Finals, what he did in the finals. 29, 10, and 7 Finals MVP. A bad Finals for him the next year. 25, 11, and 7, and a Finals MVP, including 37 and 12 in Game 7. The next year, 28, 8, and 4 on 57% shooting. And the guy who held him to that won Finals MVP. The next year, 36, 13, and 9. And the guy who held him to that won Finals MVP. Then, obviously, the championship in Cleveland, 30, 11, and 9. The next year, averaging a triple-double, 34, 12, and 10 on 56%. And his last year in Cleveland, 34, 9, and 10, including a 51-point Game 1. Just his NBA Finals performances, forget all the regular season stuff, would have made him athlete of the decade. But Serena and Usain are great.
You can't do it while pregnant. Serena was able to do it while pregnant.
Confirmed. That is, you know what? Trump card, sir.
That's it. I started jotting down a number of things I did while I was pregnant, and I haven't written one down yet. Serena Williams.
Well, that's a great answer.
Thank you for listening to the First Things First podcast. Remember, leave us a review and tell us what you think. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts and catch us on FS1 Monday through Friday, 6:30 a.m. Eastern.